The sun was slowly setting behind the distant mountains, casting long shadows across the dry desert land. The air was hot and dusty, and the wind carried a faint, sharp scent of sagebrush. A lone figure moved carefully along a narrow trail, her feet making soft, crunching sounds on the gravel. She was a woman of strong features and quiet dignity. Her skin was sun-kissed, and her dark hair was tied back in a simple braid. Her eyes, however, held the weight of many long days of travel and nights spent under the stars. She paused for a moment. Looking out at the open land before her, she could see the silhouette of a small ranch in the distance, the only sign of life for miles around. Her name was TonightThe, a woman of the Apache people. She had been traveling for days, moving through rugged terrain, trying to find a safe place to rest. Her tribe had faced hardships in recent months, and TonightThe had left for reasons she could not fully explain even to herself. She was seeking something more than shelter. She was seeking a moment of peace, a place to breathe without fear. But for now, her immediate need was simple, a safe place to spend the night. The ranch came into clearer view as she walked closer. It was a modest homestead, surrounded by a few fences that enclosed a pasture where horses grazed. Smoke curled up from a chimney, signaling that someone was at home. TonightThe's steps slowed as she approached the property. She had learned long ago to be careful. Not everyone would welcome her because of who she was. Many in the towns nearby feared or mistrusted the Apache people, and she had experienced such fear before. But she had no other choice. She needed shelter tonight. The gate creaked as she pushed it open, and she stepped into the yard. A man was there, finishing his work with a team of horses. He was tall, with broad shoulders and strong hands, the kind of hands that told a story of hard work and long days under the sun. He looked up when he noticed her, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied the stranger standing in his yard. "I just need a place tonight," TonightThe said softly, her voice steady but humble. She did not beg, nor did she demand. Her words carried honesty, and something in her expression spoke of the truth in them. The man hesitated. Samuel Hart, the rancher, had lived alone for many years after losing his wife. He was used to quiet, predictable life on the ranch, and strangers often brought trouble. He studied her carefully, noting her worn clothing and tired expression. There was a moment of silence, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk overhead and the low whinny of a horse. "Tonight, you say?" he asked cautiously. "The house is small, and it's just me. I don't usually—" He paused, struggling to find the right words. "I understand," TonightThe said gently, sensing his hesitation. "I only need a place to rest. Just for the night. No trouble, I promise." Samuel looked at her for a long time. There was something in her eyes, a quiet strength and honesty that made him pause. He could see she had traveled far and faced many hardships, and for some reason, he felt a pull to help her, even though his instincts told him to be wary. "All right," he said finally. "You can stay. But just for tonight." TonightThe nodded in gratitude. A small smile touched her lips, and she followed him toward the house. The sun had now dipped below the horizon, leaving a warm orange glow over the desert. The ranch was simple, with a small kitchen, a few rooms, and a fireplace that already held a small, crackling fire. As she entered, TonightThe felt a strange sense of relief. The warmth of the fire, the smell of fresh bread on the table, and the quiet hum of life in the ranch gave her a sense of security she had not felt in a long time. She set down her small bundle of belongings and took a deep breath. For the first time in days, she could rest. Samuel busied himself with preparing a simple meal. He moved quietly around the kitchen, the movements of someone used to hard work and routine. TonightThe watched, curious about this man who had opened his home to her without knowing her. She could sense that he was cautious, but not unkind. There was a gentle strength in him, a patience that came from years of working with the land and animals. After the meal, they sat by the fire. The room was small, but it felt cozy. TonightThe spoke first. Telling him about her journey, she spoke of the desert, of the nights under the stars, and of the people she had met along the way. Samuel listened quietly, fascinated by her stories. He had heard tales of the Apache people, but hearing them from someone who had lived, it was different. Her words painted pictures of courage, survival, and resilience. She did not speak of all her troubles. Not yet. Some things were too heavy to share with a stranger, but she spoke enough to reveal her character. A woman who had faced danger, who had relied on her wits and strength to survive, and who carried a quiet dignity, despite the hardships of life. Samuel found himself drawn to her stories. There was something in her voice, a rhythm that was both soothing and commanding. He realized he had not had a conversation like this in years, one that was honest, deep, and free of the small talk that filled most interactions in town. As the night grew darker, the wind outside picked up, rattling the windows and making the firelight dance across the walls. Natsa sat closer to the warmth, feeling safe for the first time in many nights. She thought of her journey, of the risks she had taken, and of the moment she had decided to ask for help. She had not expected kindness, and yet here it was, offered without hesitation. Samuel broke the silence at last. "You've traveled far," he said simply. "It's not easy, crossing this land alone." Natsa nodded. "No, it is not," she replied, "but sometimes you have no choice. You keep moving, hoping for a safe place, a kind heart." Samuel looked at her, realizing that her words were not just about the journey, but about life itself. He felt a respect for her that went beyond the usual courtesy he showed to strangers. She was strong, wise, and brave, all qualities he admired, and all qualities that seemed rare in the world he lived in. They spoke long into the night. The fire crackled, casting shadows on the walls, and the stars outside shone brightly over the desert. Natsa felt a strange comfort in the presence of Samuel. She did not know him, yet she trusted him. It was a trust built on something deeper than words, a mutual understanding that they were both, in their own ways, navigating a difficult world. Eventually, the fire burned low, and the room grew quiet. Natsa prepared to rest in the small room Samuel had set aside for her. She thanked him once more. Bowing her head slightly, Samuel nodded, offering a small smile. "Sleep well," he said. "The night is long, but you'll be safe here." As she lay down, Natsa thought about the day's journey and the unexpected kindness she had encountered. She had asked for a place to stay for one night, and she had received not just shelter, but respect and understanding. In a world that often treated her people with fear or suspicion, this small act of kindness felt monumental. Outside, the desert night continued, filled with the sounds of distant animals and the whispering wind. Inside, a quiet peace settled over the small ranch. Two strangers, brought together by chance, shared a moment of connection that would shape the days to come. Natsa closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the fire and the safety of the home around her. For the first time in many nights, she allowed herself to rest fully, knowing that tomorrow she would face the world again, but for now, she had found a small place of comfort, and it was enough. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the desert, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. The air was crisp and fresh, carrying the faint scent of sage and wildflowers. Natsa awoke to the quiet sounds of the ranch, the soft clatter of a bucket, the low whinny of horses, and the distant crowing of a rooster. She stretched and took a deep breath, feeling the warmth and safety of the place she had found the night before. Samuel was already awake, busy preparing breakfast. The smell of fresh bread baking in the oven and coffee brewing filled the small kitchen. He moved with practiced ease, his hands steady and confident as he tended to the morning chores. Despite his rugged appearance and the roughness of his hands, there was a calmness about him, a patience that came from years of working the land and understanding the rhythm of nature. Natsa entered the kitchen quietly, careful not to disturb him. She smiled softly, grateful for the small comforts she had found here. Samuel glanced up when he heard her footsteps. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm. "Sleep well?" "Yes," she replied. "For the first time in many nights, I slept well." Samuel nodded, a small smile crossing his face. He handed her a plate of bread and some fruit. "You need energy for the day," he said simply. "There is work to do." and the land won't wait for anyone. Natsa accepted the plate, appreciating his straightforward kindness. They ate in companionable silence, the sun rising higher with each passing moment. After breakfast, Samuel showed her around the ranch. She watched as he fed the horses, checked the fences, and inspected the water troughs. It was clear he cared deeply for the land and the animals under his care. "I've never seen a woman work like that," Natsa said quietly, admiration in her voice. Samuel chuckled. "It's not easy," he replied. "But the animals need care, and the land needs attention. If you ignore it, it will not forgive you." Natsa nodded, understanding the truth in his words. Her own life had taught her the same lesson. Survival required hard work, patience, and respect for the natural world. She offered to help, and Samuel accepted, showing her the tasks that needed attention. She helped him repair a section of the fence that had been damaged by a recent storm. Her hands were nimble and strong, and she moved with quiet confidence. Samuel watched her carefully, impressed by her skill and determination. It was rare to find someone so capable, especially someone who had been traveling alone. As they worked, they began to talk more openly. Samuel asked about her life, and Natsa shared what she could, speaking of her people and the challenges they had faced. She spoke of her journey across the desert, the dangers she had encountered, and the moments of fear that had tested her courage. Samuel listened, genuinely interested, asking questions and offering his thoughts. "You are brave," he said finally. "Many would have given up long before reaching this point." Natsa smiled softly. "Bravery is not about not being afraid," she said. "It is about continuing despite the fear." Samuel nodded thoughtfully. There was something in her words that resonated with him. He had faced his own fears and losses, yet he had never met anyone who carried such strength with quiet dignity. Over the following days, Natsa settled into life on the ranch. She helped with the animals, tended the small garden, and assisted with household chores. Each task she performed with care and attention, showing not just skill but a sense of responsibility that impressed Samuel. He began to rely on her presence, valuing her help and her insight. Their conversations grew deeper as well. Natsa spoke of her dreams and hopes, of the desire to find a place where she could belong. Samuel shared his own past, speaking of his late wife, the struggles of ranch life, and the loneliness he had felt for years. Despite their different backgrounds, they found common ground in their shared experiences of hardship and perseverance. One afternoon, as they rested under the shade of a large oak tree, Samuel asked a question he had been hesitant to voice. "Why did you come here?" he said gently. "There are safer places to go, towns where people might welcome you more easily." Natsa looked at him, her dark eyes thoughtful. "I did not know where to go," she said, "but something in me told me this place, your ranch, was where I needed to be. I did not know why, but I felt I would be safe here, even if only for a short while." Samuel studied her for a long moment, sensing the truth in her words. There was a connection between them, something unspoken but undeniable. He felt a sense of responsibility for her, a desire to protect her and to ensure she had a place where she could rest without fear. As the days passed, the two began to learn from each other. Natsa taught Samuel about the desert, about the plants and animals, and how to survive in harsh conditions. Samuel shared his knowledge of ranching, of tending animals and crops, and of navigating the world in a way that was practical and grounded. They complemented each other, each bringing strengths that the other lacked. Word of Natsa's presence on the ranch began to spread in the nearby town. Some were curious, others skeptical, and a few were openly hostile. It was rare for someone of Apache heritage to live openly among settlers, and the unusual arrangement drew attention. Samuel, however, did not care. He valued her presence and her help, and he was willing to face whatever judgment came from others. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat by the fire once more. The desert sky was dark, filled with countless stars, and the quiet of the night surrounded them. Natsa spoke softly, reflecting on her journey and the unexpected kindness she had found. "I never imagined a place like this existed," she said. "A place where someone would welcome me without fear or judgment. I only asked for shelter, and yet I have found more than that. I have found understanding, and perhaps even friendship." Samuel nodded, looking into the fire. "It is rare to find someone who understands without needing to explain everything," he said. "I have lived a long time, and I have seen many people come and go." Natsa felt a warmth in her chest at his words. She had been cautious, as always, wary of trusting too easily. Yet there was something about Samuel that inspired confidence. She could feel it in the way he spoke, in the way he treated the land and animals, and in the quiet strength he carried. The following weeks passed quickly, filled with hard work, shared stories, and quiet moments of companionship. Natsa and Samuel grew closer. Not through grand gestures or dramatic events, but through the simple, everyday rhythm of life on the ranch. They began to rely on each other, not out of necessity alone, but out of respect and appreciation for one another. Natsa began to feel a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. She was not just a traveler or a visitor. She was becoming a part of this small, rugged world, a part of the life that Samuel had built. And Samuel, in turn, found himself drawn to her presence, valuing not just her help, but her insight, her courage, and her quiet strength. One morning, as they worked together in the garden, Samuel paused and looked at her. "You have changed this place," he said quietly, "not just by helping, but by being here. I did not realize how much I needed someone like you." Natsa smiled, feeling a mixture of gratitude and surprise. "I came here by chance," she said. "I only asked for a place to stay. I never imagined it would become this." "It is more than a place," Samuel said. "It has become a home, because of you." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they returned to their work, their movements synchronized and natural. The trust between them had grown into something solid and dependable, a foundation built on mutual respect and shared experience. Each day, the bond deepened, unspoken but undeniable. By the end of the second month, Natsa had become an essential part of the ranch. Samuel could not imagine life without her presence, nor could she imagine leaving this place that had welcomed her when the world had been so harsh. Their friendship had grown strong, resilient, and full of quiet understanding, a connection that promised to endure even the challenges that lay ahead. And so, life on the ranch continued, filled with hard work, quiet moments, and the beginnings of a bond that neither of them had anticipated. What had started as a simple request for shelter had grown into something much deeper, something neither Natsa nor Samuel could yet fully understand, but both could feel its presence in every shared glance, every act of kindness, and every word spoken by the fire at night. Life on the ranch was not always easy, and Natsa quickly learned that the quiet days she had come to enjoy often hid unexpected challenges. The desert was beautiful, but it was also harsh. Summers brought scorching heat that made work exhausting, while sudden storms could tear through the land, flooding fields, and damaging fences. Even the animals required constant attention, each with their own needs and quirks. Natsa had faced difficulties before in her travels, but nothing had prepared her for the full weight of ranch life. One afternoon, Samuel and Natsa were checking the fences along the eastern pasture. The sun was high, and the air shimmered with heat. A section of the fence had been damaged by a recent storm, the wooden posts leaning at odd angles. Samuel knelt, examining the broken fence, while Natsa stood nearby, considering how best to fix it. "This fence has to hold," Samuel said. "If it gives way, the horses could escape, and some of them are difficult to catch once they get loose." Natsa nodded. "I can help," she said. "We can fix the posts and reinforce the rails. It will take time, but we can do it before sunset." Working side by side, they lifted the heavy posts into place and hammered in new rails. Sweat poured down their faces, their clothes sticking to their skin in the desert heat. But neither complained. The work was hard, yet satisfying, each strike of the hammer bringing the fence closer to completion. During a brief pause, Samuel wiped his forehead with a handkerchief and looked at Natsa. "You are stronger than you look," he said with a small smile. "I did not expect you to handle this so well." Natsa smiled back, brushing dust from her hair. "Strength comes in many forms," she replied. "I have learned to be strong because I must be. The land demands it, and life demands it." Their efforts were interrupted by the sound of shouting from the edge of the property. Samuel looked up, alarm crossing his face. A group of men had appeared near the road, their expressions hostile. Some townspeople did not approve of Natsa living on the ranch, and it seemed that a few had come to confront them. "Who are they?" Natsa asked quietly, sensing the tension in the air. "Some men from the town," Samuel said grimly. "They do not understand, and they do not like what they see. Stay close to me." The men approached, their words sharp and unkind. They questioned Samuel about why he had allowed an Apache woman to live on his property, accusing him of breaking the unspoken rules of the town. Samuel listened calmly, answering firmly but without anger. He made it clear that Natsa was welcome and that she had every right to be on the ranch. Natsa stood beside him, silent but resolute. Her presence was a quiet statement in itself. She would not be intimidated or forced to leave. Slowly, the men realized they would gain nothing by arguing further. With scowls and muttered complaints, they left, disappearing down the dusty road. Samuel exhaled deeply, running a hand over his face. "It is not always easy to do what is right," he said, "but it is worth it." Natsa nodded. "I have faced many people who did not understand me," she said. "This is no different. You have my gratitude for standing with me." After the incident, the two returned to their work, though the atmosphere felt heavier. It was a reminder that the world outside the ranch could be cruel, and that their unusual friendship would not always be accepted. Yet it also strengthened their bond. They had faced hostility together, and their trust in each other deepened as a result. Days turned into weeks, and the harshness of the desert continued to test them. One particularly dry summer, the water supply became scarce. The small well that provided water for the house and animals began to run low, and Samuel and Natsa had to ration carefully. Each day became a careful balance of using water for drinking, cooking, and tending the animals. Natsa suggested ways to conserve water and to gather additional supply from nearby streams. She taught Samuel techniques she had learned from her people, ways to collect morning dew, methods to store water safely, and tips for keeping the soil fertile despite dryness. Samuel listened intently, impressed by her knowledge and resourcefulness. Without her guidance, the summer would have been even more difficult. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Samuel and Natsa sat outside, watching the sky change colors. The heat of the day had faded, leaving a cool breeze in its place. Samuel broke the silence, his voice thoughtful. "You have brought more than help to this ranch," he said quietly. "You have brought wisdom and courage. I cannot imagine managing all of this alone." Natsa looked at him, surprised by his words. "I did not come here to change anything," she said softly. "I only came to find a place to rest, to survive another day. Yet somehow, we have helped each other." Samuel smiled, a rare softness in his eyes. "It is true," he said. "We are stronger together." Not all challenges came from nature or the townspeople. One day, a group of wild horses wandered into the ranch, their sudden appearance causing panic among the other animals. Samuel and Natsa worked together to guide the newcomers back into the pasture, calming the frightened horses and repairing the damage they had caused. The task required patience, quick thinking, and teamwork. As they worked side by side, Samuel realized how much he relied on Natsa. Her knowledge of animals and the land was invaluable. But even more than that, her presence gave him a sense of companionship he had not known in years. He began to see her not just as a helper, but as someone whose strength and character complemented his own. Natsa, too, began to feel a growing respect for Samuel. He was not only strong and capable, but also fair and thoughtful. He treated her as an equal, valuing her opinions and trusting her judgment. For someone who had often faced judgment or dismissal because of her heritage, this was a rare and precious gift. One night, after a long day of work repairing the fences and tending to the animals, Samuel and Natsa sat by the fire. The stars above the desert were bright, and the quiet of the night was soothing. They spoke of small things, the weather, the crops, the animals, but there was an underlying current of understanding that connected them beyond words. "You have changed my life," Samuel said quietly, staring into the flames, "not just by helping me with the ranch, but by showing me a different way to see the world. I had grown used to being alone, but now, things feel different." Natsa looked at him, her heart touched by his honesty. "I did not expect to find a place like this," she said softly. "I only asked for shelter. But somehow, I have found more than that. I have found someone who understands, someone who does not judge." Their connection continued to grow, built on shared experiences and the challenges they had faced together. Every obstacle, whether it was a storm, a shortage of water, or hostile townspeople, strengthened their bond. They had learned to trust each other, to rely on each other's skills, and to face the world together. One morning, after a particularly harsh storm had damaged part of the barn, Samuel and Natsa worked tirelessly to repair it. The rain had soaked the ground, making the work difficult and tiring. As they lifted beams and hammered boards into place, Samuel paused to look at Natsa. "You are remarkable," he said, his voice full of admiration. "I have seen many people in my life, but few with your courage and determination." I. Natsa smiled, wiping mud from her hands. "Courage is not about being fearless," she said. "It is about continuing, even when the world makes it difficult." Samuel nodded thoughtfully. He realized that this lesson applied to more than just the ranch, it applied to life itself, and he was beginning to understand that Natsa had brought more than strength and knowledge. She had brought perspective, hope, and a quiet wisdom that touched his heart. As the days passed, life on the ranch settled into a rhythm. They continued to face challenges, but each one was met with patience, skill, and teamwork. The bond between Samuel and Natsa grew stronger, built on mutual respect and shared experience. Their friendship had transformed into something deeper, a connection neither of them had expected when Natsa had first arrived seeking shelter. By the end of the summer, the ranch had survived the storms, the water shortage, and the challenges of tending the land and animals. Samuel and Natsa had faced every difficulty together, and in doing so, they had discovered a trust and companionship that neither could ignore. What had begun as a simple request for a place to stay had grown into a partnership, one forged through hard work, courage, and the shared triumphs and trials of life on the ranch. The days on the ranch were long and filled with work, yet there was a new lightness in the air. The bond between Samuel and Natsa had grown stronger, and it was no longer just the trust of two people who survived challenges together. It had become something deeper, something neither fully understood yet. They shared laughter over small victories, quiet moments by the fire, and the comfortable silence that comes with true companionship. One warm morning, Samuel and Natsa worked together in the garden, tending the vegetables and herbs that would sustain the household. The soil was rich and dark, and Natsa moved with confidence, planting seeds and carefully watering each row. Samuel watched her for a moment, struck by the way she moved, graceful, focused, and steady. He realized he had come to depend on her not just for help with the ranch, but for her presence, for the comfort and understanding she brought to his life. "You have made this place feel different," Samuel said softly, breaking the quiet. "When I was alone, it felt empty, even when the work kept me busy. Now, there is life, warmth, and purpose here, because of you." Natsa paused, wiping her hands on her skirt. She looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "I never expected this," she admitted. "I only came for shelter. I never imagined I would find this." They shared a quiet smile, the kind that said more than words could express. In that moment, the world outside the ranch, the harsh desert, the distant town, the judgment of strangers faded away. All that mattered was the connection they had built. The trust, respect, and growing affection that tied their lives together. As the weeks passed, Samuel found himself thinking about Natsa in ways he had never thought about anyone before. He admired her strength, her courage, and her wisdom. But there was something more. Something personal, tender, and undeniable. He noticed the way her eyes caught the sunlight, how her laughter could lighten the heaviest day, and how her quiet determination inspired him to be better. Natsa, too, felt a stirring in her heart. She had faced loneliness, fear, and hardship for most of her life. Yet here, in the safety of the ranch, she found herself drawn to Samuel in a way that was both surprising and comforting. She respected him, yes, but she also felt something deeper. A warmth, a trust, and a growing affection that she had never allowed herself to feel before. One evening, after a long day of tending the animals and repairing a section of the barn, they sat together by the fire outside. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, and the first stars began to appear. Samuel stared into the flames, gathering the courage to speak words he had long held in his heart. "Natsa," he began, his voice gentle, "I have come to realize something I cannot ignore any longer. I care for you not just as a friend, not just for your help on the ranch, but as someone I feel I cannot live without." Natsa looked at him, her heart beating faster. She had felt the same emotions but had been unsure how to confront them. She had never expected love to find her in such an unexpected place, from a man she had only met months ago. And yet, as she looked into Samuel's eyes, she saw sincerity, honesty, and a depth of feeling that matched her own. Samuel," she said softly, struggling to find the words. "I have felt the same. I did not know if it was right, or if it was possible. But my heart tells me I feel something for you. Something I cannot ignore." Samuel reached for her hand, taking it gently in his own. "I know the world may not understand," he said, "but I cannot imagine my life without you. I want us to face it together, whatever comes our way." Natsa nodded, a small smile spreading across her face. "I want that too," she said. "I want to be with you, to face life together." The next days were filled with a new sense of closeness. Their partnership on the ranch had always been strong, but now it carried an added depth, an emotional connection that enriched their shared life. They laughed more freely, spoke more openly, and supported each other in ways that went beyond work. Every shared glance and gentle touch spoke of love, trust, and a growing commitment. However, life outside the ranch still posed challenges. Rumors of their closeness reached the town, and not everyone approved. Some whispered cruelly. Others merely questioned the propriety of an Apache woman living with a rancher. Natsa had grown accustomed to such scrutiny, yet it still stung. Samuel, however, faced it with quiet determination. He would not let the judgment of others interfere with their lives. One afternoon, as they worked repairing a corral, a group of townspeople approached, their expressions wary. Samuel stepped forward, placing himself between Natsa and the strangers. "She is welcome here," he said firmly. "She has every right to be on this land, and I will not tolerate anyone questioning that." The townspeople muttered among themselves but eventually left, realizing that Samuel's resolve was unwavering. Natsa looked at him with gratitude, touched by his protection and support. "Thank you," she said softly. "I do not take your courage for granted. You are worth it." Samuel replied simply, his eyes meeting hers. "I care for you, Natsa, and I will always stand by you." As the seasons began to change, the ranch faced new challenges. Winter approached, bringing cold winds and the first snow of the season. The animals required extra care, the crops needed protection, and the house had to be prepared for the harsh weather. Samuel and Natsa worked tirelessly, supporting each other in every task. Their partnership had grown into something unbreakable, a bond forged by shared effort and mutual respect. One evening, as snowflakes began to fall softly outside, Samuel spoke again of what had been on his mind for some time. "Natsa," he said, his voice serious but gentle, I want to ask you something important. I do not know if it is too soon, or if the timing is right, but I cannot hold it inside any longer. Natsa looked at him, sensing the weight of his words. Her heart raced, both with anticipation and a touch of fear. She trusted him. Yes, but this was a decision that could change everything. I want us to be more than companions, Samuel continued. I want us to share our lives completely. I want to marry you, Natsa. I want you to be my wife, my partner, my family. I cannot imagine facing the future without you by my side. Natsa felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had never imagined such a life, never dreamed that she could find love in such an unexpected place. Her mind raced with thoughts of her people, her heritage, and the challenges that lay ahead. Could she leave behind her life as she had known it? Could she embrace a new life with a man she had only recently met? And yet, as she looked into Samuel's eyes, she saw nothing but sincerity, respect, and unwavering love. She realized that the safety, kindness, and understanding he offered were more than she had ever hoped for. Her heart spoke clearly. This was where she belonged. With him, facing the world together. Yes, she said finally, her voice soft, but steady. Yes. I will marry you, Samuel. I want to share my life with you. Samuel's face broke into a warm smile, and he took her hands in his. You have made me the happiest man alive, he said. Together, we will face everything, storms, hardships, and joys alike. And we will do it side by side. That night, they sat by the fire, hands entwined, the snow falling gently outside. They spoke of the future, of the home they would build together, and of the family they might have. The warmth of the fire matched the warmth in their hearts, a promise of love, trust, and partnership. In the days that followed, their lives took on a new rhythm. The ranch remained challenging, but every task was shared with renewed purpose and joy. They laughed more freely, spoke more openly, and faced difficulties with a sense of unity that made even the harshest days bearable. For Natsa, the decision to marry Samuel was not just about love, it was about finding a place where she could belong, where her strength and courage were appreciated, and where she could face the world without fear. For Samuel, it was about opening his heart to someone who had changed his life in ways he had never imagined possible. And so, as winter settled over the desert, a new chapter began on the ranch. It was a chapter filled with hope, love, and the promise of a shared future. What had started as a single night's request for shelter had grown into a lifelong partnership, built on trust, respect, and the courage to embrace the unexpected. Winter slowly gave way to spring, and the desert around the ranch began to bloom with new life. Flowers pushed through the dry soil, the animals thrived, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blossoms and fresh grass. For Samuel and Natsa, life had changed in ways neither of them could have imagined. Their decision to marry had not only deepened their bond but had also brought a sense of purpose, joy, and belonging that had been missing from their lives for so long. The wedding itself was simple but filled with meaning. Samuel and Natsa chose to honor both their worlds, blending the traditions of the Apache people with the customs of the frontier. A few close friends, neighbors, and a few of the townspeople who had come to respect Samuel's honesty attended. There was no lavish ceremony, no grand celebration, only warmth, sincerity, and the shared acknowledgement of a union built on trust and love. Natsa wore a simple dress she had made herself, adorned with small decorations inspired by her heritage. Samuel wore his usual work clothes, neat and clean, but with a small flower pinned to his chest. They exchanged vows quietly, looking into each other's eyes, promising to support, respect, and care for one another in all circumstances. Their words were not just promises to each other, but acknowledgments of the journey they had taken, the hardships, the challenges, and the moments of shared triumph that had brought them to this day. After the ceremony, they returned to the ranch, hand in hand, ready to continue building their life together. The work of the ranch had not changed. The animals still required care, the land needed tending, and the harsh desert would always bring new challenges. But now, they faced it all as partners, knowing that together they could overcome whatever came their way. Life settled into a rhythm of hard work, companionship, and shared joy. Samuel and Natsa tended the land, repaired fences, cared for the animals, and maintained the small home that had become their sanctuary. But there was also laughter, storytelling, and quiet moments by the fire, where they spoke of dreams, memories, and the life they were creating together. Natsa's presence brought a new perspective to the ranch. She taught Samuel to see the land not just as property to manage, but as a living part of the world that demanded respect and understanding. She introduced small traditions from her Apache heritage, sharing knowledge about plants, animals, and the stars above. Samuel listened, learned, and incorporated her wisdom into his own practices, creating a harmony between their ways of life. Over time, the couple welcomed children into their home. Their family grew slowly, with laughter filling the rooms and the sound of tiny feet running across the floors. Samuel and Natsa taught their children the lessons they had learned from life itself: courage, kindness, hard work, and respect for all living things. They shared stories of the desert, of the Apache people, and of the ranch, ensuring that their children understood both their heritage and the values that had guided them through difficult times. The townspeople, who had once been wary of Natsa, gradually came to accept her as part of the community. Many admired her wisdom, her courage, and her dedication to the land. Children in the town looked up to her, fascinated by her stories of the desert, the stars, and the traditions of her people. Samuel's neighbors respected his honesty and kindness. And over time, the couple became a respected and valued part of the community. Life was not without challenges, of course. Harsh winters, droughts, and occasional illnesses tested their resilience. Yet Samuel and Natsa faced each difficulty together, drawing strength from their bond and from the life they had built. Every challenge became a shared experience, every hardship a lesson, and every triumph a reason to celebrate. Their partnership was not just about survival. It was about building a life full of love, respect, and mutual understanding. As the years passed, Samuel and Natsa became a symbol of hope and courage for those around them. Their story, how a woman seeking shelter for one night, became the heart of a family and a thriving ranch spread quietly through the town and beyond. It was a story that inspired others, showing that kindness, understanding, and trust could create bonds stronger than prejudice, fear, or circumstance. Even in the quiet moments, when the sun set behind the mountains and the desert was bathed in golden light, Samuel and Natsa found joy in each other's presence. They would sit together outside, watching the animals, listening to the wind, and speaking softly of the future. Their love was steady and enduring, built not on passion alone, but on shared experience, mutual respect, and the courage to embrace life together. Natsa often reflected on the night she had arrived at the ranch, weary and uncertain, asking simply for a place to stay. She had never imagined that a single night of shelter could lead to a life filled with love, family, and purpose. And yet, that small act of kindness had changed everything. She had found not only a home, but a partner, a family, and a life that was richer than she could have dreamed. Samuel, too, often thought back to that night. He remembered the first moment he had seen Natsa standing at his gate, tired and cautious. He had not known then how profoundly she would change his life, how her courage and wisdom would enrich the ranch, and how her presence would fill the emptiness he had felt since his wife's passing. He realized that sometimes, the simplest acts of kindness, offering shelter, extending trust, sharing compassion, could create the most extraordinary outcomes. Together, they watched their children grow, teaching them about the desert, the animals, and the importance of respect and integrity. They shared stories of their own journeys, of challenges overcome, and lessons learned, instilling values that would guide the next generation. Their family became a living testament to the power of trust, kindness, and love. Years later, as they sat on the porch of their home, now weathered by time but filled with warmth and memories, Samuel took Natsa's hand in his. The desert stretched before them, vast and beautiful, the same land that had brought them together so many years ago. "We have come far," Samuel said softly, his eyes reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. "Yes," Natsa replied, squeezing his hand. They smiled at each other, a quiet understanding passing between them. Their journey had been one of hardship and challenge, of trust and courage, but it had also been one of love, partnership, and hope. They had created a life together, a family, and a home filled with warmth, respect, and happiness. And so, the ranch continued to thrive under their care. Samuel and Natsa faced each day with determination, love, and the knowledge that together, they could overcome anything. Their story became a quiet legend in the town, a reminder that a simple act of kindness, a willingness to trust, and the courage to open one's heart could change lives forever. In the end, it was not the hardships or the storms that defined their life together, but the moments of understanding, the laughter shared by the fire, the lessons passed to their children, and the love that had grown quietly but steadily over the years. What had started as a single night's request for shelter had blossomed into a lifetime of partnership, family, and legacy. Natsa often thought of the first night she had stepped onto the ranch, tired and unsure. She had come seeking safety, yet she had found so much more love, respect, and a place where she truly belonged. Samuel, too, reflected on the journey that had begun when he had opened his home to a stranger. In that decision, he had found companionship, love, and a life richer than he could have ever imagined. Together, they faced the future, hand in hand, hearts united, and lives intertwined. The ranch, the desert, and the family they had built stood as a testament to their courage, resilience, and the enduring power of love. And every night, as the stars shone above the desert, they would sit together, grateful for the journey that had brought them together, and for the life they had created, a life full of hope, joy, and the quiet, steadfast love that had grown from a single, simple act of kindness.